I never thought I'd be the kind of person to spill my guts on an anonymous online forum, but here I am, fingers trembling as they hover over the keyboard. My name is Ella, and I'm about to confess to a series of events that have turned my life upside down and inside out. It all started on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday evening, but looking back, I realize it was the beginning of the end of life as I knew it. I'm a 28-year-old marketing executive, living what most would consider a picture-perfect life in a bustling city. I have a great job, a beautiful apartment, and a circle of friends who I thought I could trust with anything. But as I've come to learn, appearances can be deceiving, and the people we think we know best can surprise us in the most unexpected ways. It was at my best friend Sophia's engagement party where everything began to unravel. The venue was a swanky rooftop bar, the kind of place where the city's elite gather to see and be seen. I arrived fashionably late, my heels clicking against the polished floor as I made my way to the bar. That's when I first laid eyes on him. Alexander. He stood out in the crowd, not just because of his striking good looks, but because of the air of mystery that seemed to surround him. Our eyes met across the room, and I felt an immediate jolt of electricity. It was the kind of instant connection you read about in romance novels, but never truly believe exists in real life. As fate would have it, Alexander turned out to be the best man to Sophia's fiancé, James. Throughout the evening, we found ourselves gravitating towards each other, our conversations flowing effortlessly. His wit was sharp, his charm undeniable, and I found myself hanging on his every word. By the end of the night, we had exchanged numbers, and I left the party with a mix of excitement and guilt swirling in my stomach. You see, I had a boyfriend, Mark. We'd been together for 3 years, and while our relationship had grown comfortable, it lacked the spark that I felt with Alexander in just one evening. I tried to push thoughts of Alexander out of my mind, convincing myself that it was just a fleeting attraction, nothing more. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Over the next few weeks, Alexander and I began texting regularly. At first, it was innocent enough, discussions about work, shared interests, and the occasional joke. But as time went on, our conversations grew more personal, more intimate. I found myself looking forward to his messages, my heart racing every time my phone buzzed with a notification from him. I knew I was treading dangerous waters, but I couldn't seem to stop myself. The guilt was eating me alive, but the thrill of our budding connection was intoxicating. I told myself that as long as nothing physical happened, I wasn't really cheating on Mark. But deep down, I knew that emotional infidelity could be just as damaging. Things came to a head at Sophia's bachelorette party. We were at a trendy nightclub, the music pulsing through our bodies as we danced and drank. In my slightly inebriated state, I made the reckless decision to text Alexander. Before I knew it, he was there, having come to the same club with James and some other friends. The moment I saw him, everything else faded into the background. We danced together, our bodies moving in perfect sync, the sexual tension between us palpable. As the night wore on, we found ourselves in a quiet corner, our faces inches apart. I knew I should pull away, but I couldn't. His lips met mine, and in that moment, I forgot about everything else. Mark, my guilt, the consequences of my actions. The kiss was passionate, urgent, filled with all the pent-up desire we'd been harboring for weeks. When we finally broke apart, reality came crashing back. I mumbled some excuse and fled the club, my mind reeling from what had just happened. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache and an overwhelming sense of shame. I had crossed a line and there was no going back. I spent the day in a haze, ignoring calls from both Mark and Alexander, trying to figure out what to do next. That evening, I decided I needed to come clean to Mark. He deserved the truth, no matter how painful it might be. I invited him over, my heart heavy with the weight of my confession. As I stumbled through my explanation, I watched the hurt and betrayal flash across his face. He listened in silence, his expression growing more pained with each word. When I finished, the silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Mark spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "I think I've known for a while that something was off," he said, "but I never thought you'd actually cheat on me." The disappointment in his eyes was almost unbearable. We talked for hours, tears flowing freely as we dissected our relationship. In the end, we both agreed that it was best to go our separate ways. As Mark walked out of my apartment for the last time, I felt a mixture of relief and profound sadness. A chapter of my life had closed, and I wasn't sure what the next one would bring. In the days that followed, I threw myself into work, trying to distract myself from the chaos of my personal life. Alexander reached out several times, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. I needed time to process everything that had happened, to figure out who I was and what I truly wanted. It was during this period of self-reflection that I realized how much I had been neglecting my own needs and desires in my relationship with Mark. I had settled into a comfortable routine, afraid to rock the boat or pursue my own passions. The attraction I felt towards Alexander wasn't just about him. It was about the parts of myself that I had suppressed for so long. As weeks turned into months, I slowly began to rebuild my life. I took up painting again, a hobby I had abandoned years ago. I traveled solo to places I'd always wanted to visit. I reconnected with old friends and made new ones. Slowly but surely, I started to feel like myself again, or rather, a new version of myself that I was still getting to know. It was during this period of personal growth that Alexander re-entered my life. We ran into each other at a mutual friend's birthday party, and the spark between us was still there, undeniable as ever. But this time, things were different. We were both single, and I was in a much better place emotionally. We decided to take things slow, to really get to know each other beyond the initial attraction and excitement. Our first official date was at a small, intimate art gallery. As we wandered through the exhibits, discussing the pieces and sharing our interpretations, I felt a sense of connection that went beyond physical attraction. Alexander challenged me intellectually, made me laugh, and most importantly, encouraged me to be true to myself. As our relationship progressed, I found myself opening up to him in ways I never had with anyone else. I told him about my fears, my dreams, and my insecurities, and in turn, he shared his own vulnerabilities with me. I learned about his troubled relationship with his father, his passion for environmental conservation, and his secret desire to write a novel. But just as things were starting to feel perfect, life threw another curveball my way. Sophia, my best friend whose engagement party had set this whole chain of events in motion, discovered she was pregnant. The news should have been joyous, but there was one problem. The baby wasn't James. Sophia confided in me, tears streaming down her face, that she had had a one-night stand with a colleague at a conference just before her engagement. She had convinced herself it was a mistake, a last fling before settling down. But now the consequences of that night were staring her in the face. I was stunned. Sophia had always been the responsible one, the voice of reason in our friend group. To see her in such turmoil was heartbreaking. As I held her while she cried, I couldn't help but reflect on my own recent experiences with infidelity and its aftermath. Sophia begged me not to tell anyone, especially James. She said she needed time to figure out what to do. I agreed, but the weight of her secret felt like a boulder on my chest. I found myself withdrawing from Alexander, unable to fully engage in our relationship while carrying this burden. Alexander noticed the change in my behavior and confronted me about it. I was torn between my loyalty to Sophia and my growing feelings for Alexander. In a moment of weakness, I blurted out Sophia's secret. The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted them. I had betrayed my best friend's trust, something I had sworn never to do. Alexander was understanding, but he gently pointed out that keeping such a significant secret wasn't fair to James. He urged me to encourage Sophia to come clean, offering to support both of us through the fallout. His compassion and wisdom in that moment made me fall even deeper in love with him. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of emotions and difficult conversations. I confessed to Sophia that I had told Alexander her secret, bracing myself for her anger. To my surprise, she was more relieved than upset. She admitted that the burden of keeping the secret had been tearing her apart, and my slip had given her the push she needed to confront the situation. With Alexander and me by her side, Sophia finally told James the truth. The revelation shattered their relationship, and the fallout affected our entire friend group. James was devastated, feeling betrayed not just by Sophia, but by all of us who had known and kept the secret. even if only for a short time. As I watched my friends grapple with the consequences of Sophia's actions, I couldn't help but draw parallels to my own experience with Mark. The pain of betrayal, the destruction of trust, the ripple effects that touched everyone in our circle, it was all too familiar. In the midst of this emotional turmoil, Alexander remained my rock. He helped me navigate the complex dynamics of our friend group, offering a listening ear and sound advice. His unwavering support made me realize just how much I had grown to depend on him and how deeply I had fallen in love. One evening, as we sat on my balcony watching the sunset, Alexander turned to me with a serious expression. "Ella," he said, his voice soft but firm, "I need to tell you something." My heart raced, fearing the worst, but what he said next took me completely by surprise. "I've been offered a job in London," he continued. "It's an amazing opportunity, something I've been working towards for years, but..." He paused, taking my hand in his. "I don't want to go without you." I was stunned. We had only been dating for a few months, and yet here he was, asking me to uproot my life and move across the ocean with him. Part of me was thrilled at the prospect of a new adventure with Alexander by my side, but another part was terrified. I had just started to find my footing after the turmoil of the past year. Was I ready for such a big change? "I know it's a lot to ask," Alexander said, sensing my hesitation. "And I want you to know that if you're not ready, I understand. My feelings for you won't change, regardless of your decision." His words touched me deeply. Here was a man who was willing to put my needs and feelings on equal footing with his own dreams and ambitions. It was a level of consideration and respect that I had never experienced in a relationship before. I took a deep breath, my mind racing with possibilities. "Can I have some time to think about it?" I asked. Alexander nodded, pulling me into a warm embrace. "Take all the time you need," he whispered. Over the next few days, I found myself at a crossroads. Staying meant continuing the life I had built, surrounded by friends and family, in a city I knew and loved. But it also meant staying in the aftermath of all the drama and pain of the past year. Moving to London with Alexander offered a fresh start, a chance to build something new together. But it also meant leaving behind everything familiar and stepping into the unknown. I sought advice from friends and family, but ultimately, I knew this was a decision I had to make for myself. I thought back to the person I was before all of this started, comfortable but stagnant. And I thought about who I had become, stronger, more self-aware, and more willing to take risks for the things that truly mattered. 2 weeks after Alexander's proposal, I gave him my answer. We were having dinner at the restaurant where we had our first date. As we finished our meal, I reached across the table and took his hand. "Yes," I said simply. "Yes, I'll go to London with you." The joy that lit up Alexander's face in that moment erased any lingering doubts I might have had. We spent the rest of the evening excitedly planning our move, discussing neighborhoods in London, and imagining our new life together. The months leading up to our move were a whirlwind of activity. There were apartments to find, visas to arrange, and goodbyes to be said. Sophia, now showing her pregnancy, hugged me tightly when I told her the news. "I'm going to miss you so much," she said, tears in her eyes. "But I'm so happy you found someone who makes you truly happy." Even Mark reached out when he heard I was leaving. We met for coffee, and for the first time since our breakup, there was no tension or awkwardness between us. He wished me well, and I was grateful for the closure. As I packed up my apartment, sorting through years of accumulated memories, I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this point. A year ago, I never could have imagined that a chance meeting at an engagement party would lead to such a profound transformation in my life. The day of our departure arrived all too quickly. As the plane took off, I watched the city I had called home for so long grow smaller beneath me. Alexander squeezed my hand, and I turned to look at him. In his eyes, I saw love, excitement, and a promise of adventures to come. As we soared towards our new life, I realized that sometimes the most unexpected turns in life can lead us exactly where we need to be. My journey had been filled with mistakes, pain, and difficult choices, but it had also brought me love, self-discovery, and a newfound courage to embrace the unknown. I don't know what the future holds in London or for Alexander and me, But I do know that I'm ready to face whatever comes next, with open arms and an open heart. Because sometimes the greatest risk is not taking one at all. And as I've learned, the most beautiful stories often begin with a leap of faith.